This programme tracks down thieves, it exposes fraudsters, and it brings help to those who really deserve it. This is the front line in the battle against benefit fraud. This is Saints and Scroungers. Sometimes, some of the simplest decisions you might have to make could affect you for the rest of your life. Now imagine you're off to the shops with your family to get a few of life's essentials. What could possibly go wrong? Chris Ford was happy with his life. He had his dream job working on super yachts and would come home to his loving family. But one fateful day, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, I went shopping with the family. I was assaulted, and after all the swelling and things had gone down, I didn't have any sight left.
Chris has been blind ever since this brutal attack. One minute he had his sight, the next it was ruthlessly taken from him. Through no fault of his own, this proud man who's always looked after his family and stood on his own 2 feet could now no longer even walk down the street without help. I've come to meet Chris to find out more. Tell me a bit about your life. What did you do? What your work and things like that?
Well, I used to work for a local boat builder. I did everything in the job, laminating, carpentry, electrical work, plumbing, everything. Really just got hands-on.
You're quite a family man, aren't you?
Really, there is no other life for me. My family are the most important thing in my whole life.
Chris has always taken great pride in being able to provide for his family. His wife of over 20 years, Brenda, and his 2 grown-up children, Simon and Beth. Chris served his country for nearly 12 years as a gunner in the Royal Horse Artillery and moved to Dorset 19 years ago.
I was, until I lost my sight, a real odd job man for the family, a real outgoing, roughy-toughy sort of bloke, a real man's man sort of thing. Yeah, that was me.
But all that came crashing down. I want to take you back now to the day of the incident. What actually happened?
Well, it's a normal day, really. We'd gone into the shops and I'd got shopping in both hands. We were walking back past another shop when basically the assault took place. The guy ran out of the shop. Obviously, there was a fracas in the shop and, yeah, hit me across the face. That was the defining moment, say February the 22nd, 2008 at 6 o'clock.
What happened to the attacker?
He was charged and he was sentenced for 7 months in prison.
And served how long?
3.5 months.
At this point, did you realise that your sight was gone for life?
No. I just thought, OK, you know, I've had a bit of a blow. Rough with a smooth, got a bit of swelling there, black eye, you know.
I'll get over it.
I'll be all right.
But it was beginning to look as though Chris wasn't going to be all right. The attacker had been holding a roll of coins and was wearing a ring, which meant that the force of the blow carried right through to the back of Chris's eyes, damaging the area behind the retina. The doctors were determined to try everything. For over a year, they ran MRI scans and brain tests to find out if there was any treatment that would help.
All this time, I was still hanging on, thinking something still might happen, still might get my sight back. Then eventually, King's College said, look, sorry, but as it stands at the moment, we can't see that it's going to come back.
I can't imagine hearing news like that. How did you take it?
You almost go right back to that black place. Right back, right to the beginning. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. Everybody around you is affected because they don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to help you. They don't know how they can comfort you. They can see you going down this hole and they can't pull you back at first. And you do. You think to yourself, life's over, that's it.
Even living in what should have been the safe, familiar haven of the family home held hidden, unexpected dangers for Chris.
No, it's really hard to be living in a house that was yours and it feels like you're in someone else's house sometimes. People put a chair in the wrong place and you walk into it, or people leave something in the wrong place. You know, you have to be careful. At first, it was like a prison cell, really. You couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything, you know.
It would be quite natural for anybody who's been through what you've been through to go into a state of depression. Did that happen?
Yes. It came to the point where I thought, you know, is it really worth it? You know, if it hadn't have been for Brenda at the time and the thought of the kids being without me, then, yeah, I would have probably gone down the road and just carried on walking into the sea and not bothered. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Anytime you want to stop, mate.
No, you're right. No, but that's how black it gets, you know. And from here, I'm in a good place now, but when I think back how bad it was, yeah, you know, you really do hit rock bottom. You know, you really do.
During this time of struggle, Chris's rehabilitation officer from Poole Borough Council, Karen Penny, was doing her best to help Chris adapt to his new life.
Chris was very low in mood when I first knew him and was struggling because of his eyesight and with work. And, you know, I think one of the first people probably to go in and talk to him was myself. And that actually encouraged him to be talking out loud to somebody else was you know, felt good for him that somebody was actually taking notice of what was going on and then getting relevant people involved as needed.
One of the first things that Karen wanted to do was to help Chris walk with a cane. But even that seemed like a mountain to climb.
At first, when Karen came, it was really difficult. She taught me how to cross the road. That was hard because she literally had to drag me out at first because there was no way. I'm a big guy, you know. I wanted to be holding on to a lady's arm, walking me around the streets like, you know, some dependent puppy. She was here to try and put me in a place where I could actually consider myself as part of the normal human race again.
But just as Chris was discovering a turning point emotionally, financially, the family was heading for the rocks.
It was a nightmare. It was a car crash for us. We, as a family, really, really suffered. It really destroyed everything that I'd been trying to work for the last 30 years.
A proud man, Chris was determined to try and continue to provide for his family. But the boat-building job he loved proved impossible without his eyesight, and he was forced to give up the work he loved.
When you were at that point, money's worrying you, your life's worrying you, you know, the fact that everyone's dependent on you is worrying you. How close did you get to actually losing your house?
Very close. We had bailiffs sitting outside in white vans waiting to put the padlocks on. That was my lowest point. You know, I'm a very, very proud person. I like to think that I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I like to think that I can look after my family. And it came to that point where I couldn't.
Up until that point, what was, certainly Brenda, your wife, and your opinion of benefits?
We didn't want to claim anything. You know, we've always stood on our own 2 feet. We reached the point where we thought, you know, we do need some help, but where do we go? What do we do?
Chris had reached rock bottom, but just around the corner was his very own saint. Meet Carol Jenkins, a home visiting coordinator for independent charity, the Dorset Blind Association.
My role is to visit people, make assessments, and then look to see what we are able to do for that particular person. It may be something from our book clubs, through to dancing, through to one of the many activities that we run.
Carol runs the Lighthouse Group, a social networking group for people with visual impairment, and she was getting ready to welcome Chris.
I actually had visions of loads of old geezers excuse my French, loads of old geezers sitting there, you know, all with big thick rimmed glasses, talking about knitting circles and wanting to do bowling and things. It wasn't like that. It was just like, you all right, mate? Yeah, do you want a coffee? It's brilliant.
Carol had opened up a whole new world for Chris, but having been refused benefits once, will Carol be able to get Chris the financial help he desperately needs?
He was in a very low space at that time, not wanting to go through that whole experience of being rejected again.
And will Chris ever return to his passion, life on the water?
If I'd have not been able to do it, it would have been just one more nail in the coffin saying, there, mate, told you, you're no good, you're on the scrap heap, that's it.
But first, back to the Saints. 49-year-old ex-army man Chris Ford was minding his own business on a family day out when a random vicious attack changed his life forever and left him blind.
It's like being plunged into a deep, dark mine, really. You think to yourself, life's over, that's it. What's going to happen?
But just when Chris thought the future was at its bleakest, his very own Saints stepped in to help. Carol Jenkins from the Dorset Blind Association introduced Chris to a world of new friends.
It's really good to have peer support. I mean, that is one of the big things that I try to push for. You're getting to know more people, it's starting to encourage your independence, which is a must within a family.
Although Carol had been able to help Chris to find his feet socially, it was not enough, and now she was determined to make sure he was getting the benefit help that he needed. But how to bring up the subject to such a proud, independent man?
I was quite sneaky because after the first visit to the group, I felt that I had to actually get round to see him in his home, probably as quickly as possible because there was a little bit of interest there. So I made a home visit to see him and his wife and really understand where they were at that particular time and what things they really required.
Carol was taken aback at what she found when she went round to see Chris and Brenda.
I was very surprised they weren't claiming any of the benefits they were entitled to. I was even more surprised to find that the financial aspect that was going on in the house. And they're a very, very proud family and they don't like to claim for things. And they didn't actually realise a lot of things were their right.
On the brink of losing everything they'd worked for, including the family home. For Chris and his wife Brenda, the meeting with Carol opened the floodgates.
It was almost like an outpouring of all the different problems. You know, Carol just sat and listened. We told her everything that was happening.
Carol discovered that Chris had tried to apply for some benefit help, but without success.
He was in a very low space at that time, feeling, in his words, really quite worthless and not wanting to go through that whole experience of being rejected again. So had made a decision, that's it, I'm not going to do anything. People get quite frightened and they don't want to keep pushing the system.
Carol was able to uncover just why Chris's application had been refused.
He would say that he could do absolutely everything. He can do absolutely everything. There's no reason why he can't. He just needs somebody else's eyes to assist him. He can certainly move boxes from one place to another, but he needs someone to tell him where to move things from. When he was completing his forms, they didn't think of that aspect.
Finally, with Carol's help, Chris was able to apply for the benefits he needed and was entitled to, including disability living allowance, employment support allowance, and also a carer's allowance for Brenda. Because although Brenda had a part-time job as a sales assistant, she spent a lot of her time looking after Chris. And these benefits started to make all the difference.
You get a small amount of money from different places and it adds up, and without Carol trying to help us and put us down that road, we would have lost everything.
It's made a huge difference to Chris and to the family because previously the money coming in was very, very minimal, and it's just opened lots of doors for them. There's a lot more, I don't know, peace within the family.
And most importantly, the fear of losing their home was finally lifted, and Chris and his family could look forward to the future. But the one thing that could really have put the wind back in his sails was the one thing Chris was very nearly too afraid to try.
Carol says, look, we got one of these, a taster session to go sailing, and I said, you know, I didn't want to do it.
Why?
Because I was scared of something I had been able to do being taken away from me. I had a passion for it before, and it was almost like if I'd have not been able to do it, then it would have been just one more thing, nailing the coffin, saying, there, mate, told you, you're no good, you're on the scrap heap, that's it.
But Chris plucked up his courage once again to face this next challenge, encouraged by the Yachting Charities chairperson, Anna Morland.
Sailability is an organisation that you might find all over the country, and basically it will be a group of volunteers who have got together to enable anyone with a disability to enjoy sailing.
As for Chris, he found that his fears were swept away.
The first time I went out on the boats with Sailability, it was well, it was out of the world. The experience you got back, there was an adrenaline buzz. And when I came off the water for the very, very first time, Anna, she was standing on the pontoon on the side, and she said I had a grin from one ear to the other. And that really summed up how I felt, inside and outside.
Chris, ready to tack?
Yeah.
We saw Chris get off the boat with a huge grin on his face, and we've seen him ever since. He just loved it. He found it'd given him all his freedom back that he thought he'd never do again. So it was an immediate win for him.
Now, there's just no stopping him. And so, even though I may be a bit of a landlubber, where better to catch up with this newly confident Chris than on the boat that has given him back his sea legs. I just hope I can hang on to mine.
Chris, you seem incredibly comfortable sitting here at sea. You're loving it, aren't you?
Yes, it's brilliant. It makes you feel like your disability doesn't really exist. It just wipes it away, really. It puts you on a par with everybody else, and it's just exhilarating, totally.
Now, I hear you've been doing some charity work as well.
Yeah, yeah, we've done some really funny things. I think the funniest was when we did a sponsored cycle ride, and I hadn't ridden a bike since I was a kid, I think. So off we went. It started off in this cycle ride. We then found out it was actually 35 miles we were doing. It was a real crack.
Chris is now keen to do his bit to fundraise and to help others to find their passion.
Chris is absolutely fantastic person. I can't believe the change in Chris, and sometimes it's very difficult looking at the Chris that we have now to the Chris that I actually saw walking in. Yeah, he's very supportive of people within the group. He has a good selection of friends, and I just can't believe that a support group has actually given Chris a life.
Well, I feel at the top of the world at the minute. The people in both the charities, for me, have given me my life back and made it possible for me to just go on and enjoy it.
I'll tell you what's very clear to me now. If Chris didn't have the love from his family and the help and assistance from Dorset Blind Association, he would be in a very bad place. But I'll tell you what, that man down there has got the biggest, beamiest smile I've ever seen on anybody's face, and he's enjoying life to the full. See you, guys.
Take care, bye.